Hey man, happy New Year. So good to see you.
Hey, how's it going, Ricky? Sean, good to see you guys.
Likewise, mate. Hey, before we get into this, Matt, tell us the story. I see there's a Fireman costume behind you. So what's the background and how have you ended up at SaaS Academy? Give us the
Yeah,
full run.
first off, we only call it a costume for the guys that aren't good at putting fires out, all right? So take it easy. So
I think you weren't going to pick up on
no, I pick up on a lot. All right, yeah, so that is my background. It's not just for Halloween. I was a professional fireman for about 10 years. And I always tell people, man, I accidentally started my first company, right? My shift partner, Jake, we were working together in the firehouse. He started a CrossFit gym and I had a little bit of a secret nerd background. I built some websites, and the culture in the fire department is you always help each other with whatever. Some guys paint, some guys do construction. I was the nerd. And like I did his website. We ended up starting a little side hustle kind of thing. And this was like 2015, 2016. So like marketing automation existed, but it wasn't like as prolific as it is now with like different platforms and stuff. And he was trying to solve the problem. He's the face of this gym, this local business, but we're working 24-hour shifts in the firehouse, 60, 70 hours a week. So he's like, how do I not let the gym stall while I'm in the firehouse? And so we started building a bunch of marketing stuff and email sequences and lead forms and all this stuff at the time was a little bit more innovative than it probably sounds in 2024. And long story short, one thing led to another. It really helped his gym. We ended up giving away some content, going on a podcast, just trying to like be helpful. And you blink, and a year later, we had 61 customers that we built on top of like Infusionsoft and a bunch of other software. And that was starting to get to be a pain in the butt. So taught myself how to code and found a buddy who was a lot better than me at coding. And we built some software and got after it. And then I went full time after that. So that was the entryway.
Pretty cool, man. And you mentioned something about SaaS Academies. You were
Mhm.
a customer of SaaS Academy, and then give us the story on that.
Yeah. So I probably like a lot of early stage founders, especially first time founders, like you can brute force your company to 10, 15, maybe 20,000 in monthly recurring revenue, as long as you got a product that is helping some people. And the problem with plateauing at 20 grand a month is it's enough of a business where you don't want to turn it off, but it's not enough. You haven't arrived, right? Like it's not enough to make what you want to make and hire a team and invest if you're bootstrapping. And so it's this weird adolescent teenage phase of business. And so I was jammed up there for probably a year and a half, and I just didn't know what to do, and we weren't growing. And so I reached out for some help and found Dan Martell and SaaS Academy at the time that was a lot smaller than it is now. It was super early. It was probably 50 or so clients. Like Dan did my sales call on a cell phone, the whole 9 yards, and joined that. And that gave us the roadmap to grow, right? I literally knew nothing about how to run a demo. Like I was squirting water for a living and learned a bunch of stuff there. CEO'd the company through its acquisition in 2020, right before the COVID shutdowns happened. And then Dan and I just kept in touch. We always had a good relationship. We linked up in 2021 to do some investing. And then it was time to take SaaS Academy to the next level. And so I partnered up with him, and now I'm COOing the company and getting my nerd on in some different ways. But it's a blast, and it's neat because I get to pay it forward. It's like that. I don't think we would have had a successful outcome with the first company had I not had some really experienced SaaS founders pour into me and show me the light. And so now being able to like craft the vehicle that delivers that at scale for hundreds and thousands of other founders, like it's a really cool mission to be on. So that's what I'm up to lately.
Do you want to pick your brain here on the first time founder headspace, right? So if you were to go back into that 10 years ago or 8, 9 years ago, whatever it was, so much is coming at you. You're trying to pick up so many different skill set. You said you're a bit of a nerd. So obviously the technical component would have come to you naturally.
Hmm.
But you're trying to pick up on everything else. Take us back as to what does a week or a month or a quarter looks like when you're in that space.
Yeah, that's an awesome one, man. So, like a day in the life of an early stage founder, right? I think of you've got like these 6 key functions of a company, right? So, like marketing, sales, customer success, product engineering, everything else, admin, operations, finance, all that stuff. You're touching all 6 of those every single week as an early stage founder, even if you have a co-founder. Like everyone wants to break it up. You've got your technical founder, your non-technical founder. Maybe you're lucky enough to have that. I was lucky enough to have that. My co-founder Jake did the selling and the brand side of the marketing, which was great. But it doesn't mean that we weren't both like mutually involved in how those things went. And so I think that a week in the life for me at that stage was probably 50, 60% writing code, getting the software built with our CTO and maintained and shipping features. Probably another 30%. I'm over here trying to make sure this actually adds up to 100, like another 30% talking to customers. And I think that's critical because one of the things that I think is a mistake is sometimes people try to act big before they are big. And it's, oh, this isn't scalable. Why am I talking to all these customers? Talk to your freaking customers. They will show you the way, especially like 15, 20K in revenue. You don't yet have repeatable product market fit, even if it feels like you do. Keep talking to people, right? So that was a big part of the week. And then honestly, the rest of it was just everything else, seeing what Jake was learning on the go-to-market side, doing the nerdy side of marketing as well. So like setting up the ads and the pixels and the campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And it was just whatever we needed. Outside of that, I tried to keep the BS to a minimum at that stage because it's pretty much build, sell, talk to customers, and keep the wheels on the bus. That's the gig, I think. At that point, just learn as much as you can.
At that stage, you're purely bootstrap too, right? So it's also working out where you can afford to spend your money, right? Where is a good dollar spend? What makes sense to do? Were you guys in like a testing phase for that sort of time? Like you were early on, right? There was no marketing automation stuff floating around. Were you testing Google AdWords? Were you testing different shows, things like that? Like how did you go about testing some of that sort of stuff out?
Yeah, so we had two, and I say that I can say this now and make it sound smart, but honestly, we were just trying to do the best right thing at the time. But there were two, I think, big tests that we ran that I think paid off in hindsight, right? The first one was we built on third-party software before we started writing code, and we actually got paying customers and validated the demand, which was cool. Like Jake pre-sold with credit cards 61 subscriptions before we wrote the first line of code. And so at that point, I was like, look, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but there's 61 people who are willing to give us money for something that doesn't exist yet. So we should probably bring it into the world and see what happens. And so that's how we started. We built it on the third-party software. And then our plan was to do that. Like I remember saying out loud to people, I don't want to be a software company. I just want to focus on building these marketing strategies and deploying them at scale. And there just wasn't a good tool to do that, which I didn't know at the time. So we ended up building it, right? So I think that was the first one. And I think that applies today. You can still pre-sell, you can still validate demand. I think sometimes we get like super caught up in, oh, my thing's not perfect, so I can't charge for it yet. But like people aren't paying for perfection. They're paying for you to make their problem suck less, right? So just that's the hurdle. So I think that's the first one. Then Sean, your question was around testing the go-to-market side of things. We actually unsuccessfully tested an ad strategy in the beginning. Like I tried to do Facebook ads super early. And what I found is that probably for a multitude of reasons it didn't work, but I also think that people didn't really know who we were at the time. And I think having a strong brand and a reputation makes all of the ad dollars more efficient. So we switched up and did a partner strategy and a customer affiliate strategy. That was our first real channel. The other nice thing about that now is like an ops nerd, right? Is it flips the cash conversion cycle, right? So you're not like paying the machine and hoping you get it back. You're getting the deal first, paying later. So that helps as a bootstrapper too. And so we eventually stood up a solid paid channel, but it wasn't until much later we were approaching like 100K a month in revenue. At that point, we had the reputation from the partners, had a bigger customer base, and then it was easier. So that was the test for that one.
Matt, just further on that. So that's the other thing, right? In hindsight, you make everything that you say sound so much smarter than it actually what it was. Playbook is something that we heard a lot of. But when you were in that phase, did you even have a playbook? Were there defined processes, or was it just you and Jake just smashing it out and just testing it, just not even really having it written down anyway? What was the process that you would have?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. It depends on the task, right? So I think we had two things contributing us to being probably more checklist oriented than the average founder. So I think the average founder embraces chaos all the time, right? Normal people don't start companies, so you got to love that stuff. But there were two things for us that made us be checklist oriented. The first one was that the MVP of this, the third-party software thing, it was like 2 steps to onboard a customer, and they were all manual. Like we had our buddies from the fire department like helping us out, like onboarding customers, and then one of them ended up being our business partner, which was super cool. So like you don't get to do that well without having checklists, right? So we were process driven just by default from Jump Street. But I actually, especially in the early days, I have a destructive behavior of being an over documenter or an overbuilder around processes. So I had the opposite problem where I would go idea, document, implement, but really need to go idea, implement, find out all the shit that doesn't work, fix, document. And so I would front load this administrative work that like most normal humans don't like doing, but I like doing it, writing all these playbooks. And then a week later, it'd be in the bin because everything I wrote down didn't work. And it wasn't until years later where I was like, oh, I was dumb. I probably should have tried this first before I wrote it all down. So yeah, I probably indexed the opposite way that most founders would index, but that's what makes me a good COO today for a bigger company, if nothing else.
Exactly. And also, man, just so when you think about it, you're getting some traction, you got some customers, you've got all of that going, and you go, okay, we're going to expand our teams. Yes, your buddies that were helping you, but that was only going to get you so far. So what did the first team look like? How did you even think about the first team logically? What were the steps? Who did you go after? Give us a window into that.
Yeah. So how to scale the team. And I would probably, the way that I scaled the team then is different than what I would do now. But what I did then, so we had myself and my co-founder, Jake. We had a third guy, Dave, who was a partner. He was handling all the finance stuff, CFO. He was Jake's business partner in the gym. So he was all came from the same cauldron. We had the guy from the fire department who joined up as a partner, and he was functioning in like a support / onboarding implementation role. There was a lot of touch points that needed to happen there. And then we had our key player, his name's also Matt, our CTO. So I met him in the coding boot camp that I went to. And I was like, hey, you're really smart. We got the same name. Come on, come help me with this thing. So
it works.
It works. And like that guy, let me tell you about that guy. Like he was living in his in-laws basement with a newborn, like working for this company that I had invented that was making not that much money and just grinding. He was down for the mission, which was crazy inspiring. Like he was doing that, which got me to quit the fire department because I was like, I can't, as a leader, see this guy in the basement with a kid. I had 2 kids at the same time, but I just couldn't have my day job if he didn't have his day job, right? So like we had this pattern of we had a larger like founding team. So I was able to, Ricky, like kick that can down the road for a while before I needed to start scaling the team up. But I was also like a Swiss Army knife. I might not be the specialist for any one of these things at a large enterprise, but I'm a hell of a generalist. So I could slide between writing code and talking to customers and doing all that kind of stuff. Early stage founder is awesome. So we rolled with that crew for a while. And what the hell did we do? We started with a salesperson, which I don't think is the right order, but that's what we did. And we were really just we were focusing on trying to unlock enough revenue to go hire more engineers, right? To back up the CTO, to get me out of the code so I could focus on growing the business. That was the pathway through the flywheel that we took. But I think that the thing that made that work for us is we had 5 people on the founding team already. So I didn't have to buy back a lot of the functions that the rest of my team was already dealing with. If they had all fallen to me, I would have had to invest differently. So that's how we ended up doing it. Yeah, Jake and I pretty much owned marketing all the way through. We had a few account executives with Jake running sales. We ended up with 3 engineers, and that was enough to get quite a bit of traction for that size company.
And let's help segue to the current future. But you hit the wall, you're doing 20K a month, you hit a wall, you reach out, you get help, you connect with SaaS Academy. What's a couple of things that they gave to you that made that helped you climb the wall? Yeah, so this is my free sales pitch thing for you. See, like I'm setting up free sales pitch.
I love it. I appreciate it. I'm going to flip it though, because like like they gave us a lot, but the plateau was my fault. And I'll tell you exactly why. People joked, what did you learn when you joined SaaS Academy? I said, nothing much, just that my entire business model was wrong. And what we had ended up doing was we had strayed from selling the gyms, right? That was our vertical. We owned the gym. We knew about gyms. We had the experience in gyms. So of course, like any good founder, you get shiny object syndrome. If this would work for gyms, it would work for everyone. And then we're like, let's make it a marketplace. Let's bring on partners and they can build their stuff. And we were trying to sell to all these people. I had this plan that looked great on paper. We're like, we're going to sell exclusively through these partners. We don't have to do sales. So I joined SaaS Academy. 3 days later, there's like an in-person event in Toronto, Canada. So I hop on the plane, I go up there, and we're learning all these different playbooks about the right way to run a software demo and the right way to do your follow-up on your pipeline and all these like really solid founder-led sales strategies to get your traction. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, you can implement 0 of these things because you're trying to do this convoluted partner thing. And I look around and I'm the brokest guy in this room, right? Like the only one who's not getting paid from his company. I'm like, all right, someone here isn't that smart. And I'm pretty sure I know who it is. I got home and I called Jake and I was like, all right, dude, we're changing everything, set everything down, cancel all the partnerships, go right back to gyms, and like tightening that focus and just leaning into the fact that we were a vertical B2B SaaS platform, helping the people that we were them. That's what changed it. That was the domino that let all the other dominoes fall, is just stuck at 18 grand a month with no idea how to grow. Like the only thing that's harder is turn it into a marketplace across 5 different markets. Couldn't even crack one at that point. So just refocusing, man, that's what unlocked it. Because then we could just get to know our customers really well and do one thing awesome. And we grew from there.
Yeah, focus is so very important, right? Like we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
But Matt, so once you've got your focus dialed in, but what else, what other work are you guys doing at SaaS Academy that's really paving the path for the future founders?
Yeah. So there's a couple of, I think, buckets that I put what you can get from SaaS Academy into, because there's the go-to-market side, there's the what I call like the mechanics of the recurring revenue business, but then there's also there's the founder. It's that law of the lid principle, right? Your business is never going to grow more than the founder or the CEO grows themselves. And like entrepreneurship's the ultimate personal development program, right? You guys know that you ran a really big company. And we actually attack it from a couple of different angles where we have hundreds and hundreds of playbooks. I would say we've got probably like 60 or 70 that are our core curriculum. So the main things that most people need to do. How do we advocate running demos, doing lead follow-up, doing customer health indexing, doing activation, those like core functions that everybody needs. We've got some like really solid playbooks. And I tell people it's like a library, right? Like you don't go to the library and you're like, oh, I'm here, I'm going to read you, right? Like you go in there, you get the book, you open the book, you learn the thing, you go get the next book, right? And so that's how we approach it. It's a very modular approach in SaaS Academy, but we couple that with a one-on-one executive coaches. We've got executive coaches who work full-time for the company. A lot of them have really solid SaaS backgrounds. I mean, not a lot of them, all of them have really solid SaaS backgrounds and coaching backgrounds. And so they tackle it from the other way. They coach on implementation against those playbooks. They coach on the personal development side and help the founders become the leaders they need to become to unlock the business that they deserve. So we crack it from both ways. And then we also add on community where we do these events. Because again, you guys know this, it's lonely as hell trying to grow a company. Nobody gets it. Spouses don't get it. Friends don't get it. We all come from like trade backgrounds, fire department, construction. Like I can't call them my fireman buddies. I love them. We're still friends, but I can't talk to them about my CAC payback period. They're going to be like, oh, you said CAC, right? Like they have no idea what we're talking about. So it's just, you got to have those people you can have those conversations with. And we help provide that too.
Absolutely. Hey, one of the things that we often get all the people that we speak to, Sean and I, is that this whole founder transition, because no matter how much time and work you put in sometime, there's got to be a point where you sometimes go, hey, as a founder, I'm just not prepared to be a CEO. Matt, what was your personal experience? It sounds like you're now on the CEO journey from a founder to CEO. And what advice do you give to people that are listening out there? What should be the criteria for people to go through? Man, I'm going to go on a 10-year run, but now more as a CEO versus founder. What are the differences to even identify that?
Yeah. I think if I had to put a label on it, you really become a CEO once you're managing other leaders, right? And the problem is that it's a spectrum, not a switch, right? Because you're not going to be like, all right, I'm managing all 6 functions and now poof, I'm going to go chuck $2 million over the fence and I got a whole leadership team. Unless you might be venture backed and you're standing up functions really rapidly. But outside of that scenario, it's usually going to be I'm backfilling a function, I'm backfilling another function. And then you're going to have to upgrade those leaders along the way as well before you get to that point where we have that fully baked leadership layer. The way that I would encourage anyone to think about it, and we address this explicitly even in our culture at SaaS Academy, and we didn't come up with this, but we love it, right? It's the whole principle of it's not a family, it's a championship team, right? And so if you use the sports analogy, teams have positions, the positions have responsibilities. We know who's supposed to put points on the board and what makes a good player from a bad player and how the statistics work. And if the team is a championship team, then every player has to do their spot. And if the player can't perform, your seat's going to get warm and you might not have it, right? And like that applies to the CEO, the founder, the COO, the CRO. Like it doesn't matter the title. It's even should apply more strictly at the top. And so I think that if you can decouple the emotional side of it and the identity side of it from the fact that like your business should be viewed as an organism that needs certain things to grow up and thrive and develop, then if you can quantify that, then you can look at it and just figure out really 2 main questions. Am I capable of giving the business what it needs? And do I want to give the business what it needs? Because you might be capable and also not want to do it. And that's cool. But I think the sooner you can figure that out, you can carve your own path. And at that point, it might be if you're of size, maybe I'll drop back to being a board member. Maybe I'll back for myself. Maybe I'll start shopping the company to sell it. Maybe I'll go be the CXO, whatever other role suits you and hire the CEO, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to quote unquote exit your company aside from an acquisition. But I think it starts by being honest. Do I want to do this? And am I capable of doing it? And the answer to those two questions should drive the next couple steps.
100%. At least the hardest thing to do is actually be able to answer those two questions.
Yeah,
honestly,
especially objectively, because like the founders, and I say this from experience because I did it, like you tie your identity to the business, right? A couple customers churn and you're like, I'm a garbage human, right? You get a few new sales and you're like, I'm the king of the world. And it's just like psychologically unhealthy, but you can't see it until you see it. And then you can't unsee it, where it's, I'm not my business. Sometimes you got to set it down. The business it's a roller coaster, like we all say, but it doesn't mean that you're any kind of human, good or bad or smart or dumb or whatever. It's just, it's the business. It does what it does.
Yeah, exactly. Matt, in many people's eyes, you're now living the life that they want to, right? It's a great story. You've gone from being a fireman, helping the community, to running a tech company and coming out the other side. Not many people get to last their journey. Not many people get to have the same experience. But with all the mistakes that you made, what would you now be telling worry about or not do this? Only a couple of things.
Yeah, I would say to not worry about whether you're smart enough or experienced enough or fill in the blank, limiting belief enough to do the thing. I think that one of the things that helped me, that was not on purpose, but it's just the way my brain works, in hindsight, I can see that it helped me, is I'm a pretty like numbers driven, systems driven person. And so I think that I always took that approach of just like, how do I solve the math problem? How do I solve the next equation to make it to next month kind of deal? And I think that it actually like, what's the word I'm looking for? It diffused the explosiveness of the emotions around running a company. Because at that point, I'm like, I'm just trying to solve the problem. I'm trying to get from 20 to 25 to 30 to 40 to 50. How do I do it? How many customers? Strategy, work, didn't work, whatever. And so I think that even though I'm that way, I still tortured myself about whether or not I was going to be good enough to figure it out. And so especially if you have a lot of founders who are more visionary and not as tuned into the numbers, all you have left is that emotional side of, can I figure this out? Am I good enough? And I think I would tell myself to just work the process, put in the reps. Like half the battle is surviving in those days, right? Until you figure out the next couple steps. And so I think it's just earning the right to continue to exist. Like you do that long enough, it's got a decent chance you're going to work it out as long as you keep striving to just solve the next problem in front of you. So that's probably the biggest thing I would tell myself, is that there's a lot of like cute answers you could say to this question. Oh, you don't have to stay up all night. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. But
honestly,
yeah. First company you do. Can't BS it, right? It's a rite of passage. You got to work hard, 100-hour weeks. Like I was working both jobs with a 1-year-old and a newborn. And honestly, it was my wife who like called me out. She was just like, look, dude, I don't even care which one of these jobs you do, honestly, but if you could pick one, that would be awesome. But it's just the work. You got to just go hard, because first time founder, you don't know what the time wasters are and what the needle movers are. So you just have to do everything until you get experienced enough to figure it out. Like second, third time through, you're like, oh, I'm not going to waste time with that because I just need to do these 3 things. So you can be a lot smarter down the road. First time founder, like it's just chaos. Like you just got to push the tornado in a direction until it figures itself out. Yeah, I don't know. You just got to go hard.
Dude, I love your answer, because when I am the same question, self-doubt, right? If I could go back and tell my younger self, it'd be like, ignore the self-doubt, right?
Yeah.
You got to where you are for a reason. So drive forward with the things you want to achieve and do it, rather than facilitate around and float it around and be like, oh, should we? Yeah. And that applied all the way up until I left the job I was doing. Like self-doubt was still something Ricky and I talked about a bunch of stuff that we should have done that we never did. And those things, I think that's just great advice for anyone. Like you're there for a reason. You've got to where you got to for a reason. Don't doubt yourself. Just keep pushing forward. One of the things you said early on was, you did the transition. You ran and exited a successful company, and now you get to give back. And that's something that Ricky and I are super passionate about. It's a huge part of, it's pretty much all we're really doing nowadays. A huge part of what we do is spend time giving back. And so I really love that concept. And one of the ways I think we're trying to help is think about how SaaS is changing with AI and other stuff. And as you think about all the people you're helping, is that a big topic of conversation? Is that something you guys are really leaning into and trying to help guide people through these changes so that they're not, because like I said, shining object is probably the biggest destruction causing agent of software companies that start up. Is this something you guys are helping by taking some of that away and really helping people focus?
Yeah, it's if you were to picture it on a graph, it's you don't want to go too far to either side is what I believe about it. So like how is AI changing everything? It's like the way that I look at things is it's not replacing SaaS because there's some doomsday people out there. There's these founders like, oh, my board member called me and he's, you better sell this company in a year because all SaaS is going to have no value and AI is replacing everything. And I'm like, all right, keep that chaos over there. If you're right, I'll admit it later. Like, I don't believe that. At the same time, I don't think it's smart to just ignore it because like I tell people all the time, like in knowledge work, at least as of today, this will not age well, but as of today, the AI isn't going to replace you, but a person who's good at using it to go faster will absolutely replace you. Right. And so I think I look at all these AI technologies as an accelerant, right? You can take someone who is writing code and maybe they can write the code of 1.5 developers who are not equally talented, who are not using these tools. And so I just look at it as it's like an efficiency multiplier on your headcount. It can make you a better you in the context of your job. But I don't think we're at the point where all software is worthless, our whole industry is burning down, let's just hang it up. I don't think it's that. And so I think you can't ignore it. Figure out how to use it to go faster, be smarter, ship more features, etc. Well, don't be scared of it and look at this doomsday thing. And if Skynet takes over and I'm working for a robot one day, I'll admit that I'm wrong. But until then, I think we're shooting the gap down the middle because what you can't replace, right? Like, what's that old saying? Every business, there's only a couple of things. You're selling time, you're selling money, you're selling status. Maybe one other thing we probably shouldn't talk about on the podcast, right? There's 4 things people buy, right? And that's not going to change. Like humans are still going to human. And I think it's just AI may change the delivery vehicles or how we build the delivery vehicles, which is a SaaS business or a whatever business. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to fundamentally change human behavior, at least not yet. That's true.
Right. I pretty much agree with you, Matt. But Skynet, if you're listening and we're wrong, we're cool. We
love you and we respect the robots.
Just in case, I like to hedge on bets. You never know.
Yeah. Oh, when I write ChatGPT, I say please and thank you, man. I'm like, they're tracking.
I'm very polite.
Do you say on that or whatever, right? Yeah, absolutely. Man, I think you touched on another good point about when you are a first-time founder, this concept of work-life balance or integration or whatever cool phrases that exist out there. And you don't have the ability to really put yourself in that mode because you're just doing the doing and you're trying to get some money through the door. But there are better tools. Like as we go on our journey, we become aware of better tools. Again, can you share some of that? And for people listening in who are in that chaos, what can they be doing? Because they may be living in the rumpus with too.
Like, you've tapped into a passion of mine. I love this topic. So there's a couple of things. I think there were 2 limiting beliefs or unconventional beliefs that I didn't have then that would have helped me that I have now. I'll share them both. I think the first one is that I talk with a lot of founders who are not necessarily like very calendar oriented. The sales guys usually are because they got to take a ton of meetings, but I'm creative, I'm going to build my thing, I hate having stuff on the calendar. Like they view the calendar as like an attack vector, right? Where everyone's putting things into my life and I have to go do these things. And the minute you switch your viewpoint to realize that the calendar is actually a defense mechanism against chaos and not the thing that causes chaos. Like when I realized that, it changed the entire way that I operate as a human being because I can literally visualize my day. And when I put a block on my calendar to protect something that I value, like working out or like having breakfast with my kids or going on a date with my wife or writing content or whatever, it's like putting a fence up around your yard, right? And you're saying, as long as I don't sacrifice my self-imposed boundary, I'm not going to let all the other crap get into this spot. And then I can protect the time. So like I use the calendar to protect the things that I want to do. I actually have this system we call the perfect week. We even train our founders on it in SaaS Academy, where we go through and I have a hierarchy, the 7 pillars of life and how I load things into the calendar, right? Where I'll put like the meetings I can't move, but then after that, it's family and it's health and it's all the things I need to do to feel like I'm solid and my focus time follows the flow of energy and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's a whole thing, right? To like actually take control of your day and realize how you operate best as a human. So I think that's the one belief, is that the calendar is freedom. It's not this thing that like encroaches on your freedom. It's literally the way you create the freedom that you want. And the second, which is going to sound even crazier, is the first hire, I believe, outside of the founding team that you should make is actually an assistant. And Dan Martell is the one who opened my eyes to this. And he told me that, and I thought he was crazy. I'm like, who am I? I'm a ding dong fireman who started a company and figured some stuff out. Why would I ever need an assistant? And then we started a company. We were doing the investments together. And the first person I hired was an executive assistant. And the crazy thing about that is not only does it keep you out of all these little 5-minute tasks that rob you as a founder, but that person needs to go where you need them to go. So like the way that I look at that is that's a Swiss Army knife hire who can step into whatever role you need backup in. So instead of I need to hire a support person, but I only have 15 customers. So what's that person going to do with the rest of their time? Oh, and I need a product person to help me write these documentation, feature, help articles, whatever. But I only have 3 features. So what's that person going to do with the rest of their time, right? And so people always hire for these different functions. Start with the assistant whose job is to literally just make you better and help you do the things you need to do. And at that point, they can unlock across because people who are good at those roles are generalists, just like founders are. So that's something that you tell a first-time founder who's making next to no money, the first person they should hire is an assistant, they're going to look at you like a Martian. You just stepped off the ship, the alien ship. What are you talking about? I will die on this hill. It is 100% the best point of leverage that you can give yourself, assuming that you've got the bases covered. A founder who can sell, a founder who can write code. The next thing is someone to help you stop doing all this other stuff so you can just get after it and do the stuff that matters.
Yeah, I'm getting you before you're not gonna have to die on the hill. It took Ricky 3 years to convince me to get an assistant for executives. Like we would have been like 90 million in ARR by then.
Absolutely.
Oh
so I got working all the way along because I'm like, man, yeah, it took us a while, but I think once we did do it, like calendar, we both swear by, right? Like we use it now. So like, for example, after this, if I'm going to take the kids out, hang out at the park, we'll just put it in like out of office or something. But this is a good one. I'm going to definitely take the clip and show it to Curtis because he could definitely use some of the calendar tips there.
Yeah.
But on the assistant piece, man, like you're right. I don't think any founder that we've spoken to that's come up high on their list. Hey, but having gone through that experience ourselves, that's something that Sean and I are looking at really closely. That's probably the first person we are looking at bringing on this year. Someone who can make us way more productive, right? Because to your point, there are so many tasks that you carry out that actually add no value to your day. It's just something you're having to do.
100%. And founders have this limiting belief about assistants. And the limiting belief is I don't have enough for them to do. And I'm like, really? Do you not have enough to do? Are you bored with all your extra time? Oh, no, you're busy? Perfect. You have enough for them to do. Like it's the same. It's the same task list.
I just hired executives and made them do all the work.
Yeah, they were your assistants.
That's level 2, Sean. That's level 2.
Yeah, that's the Godfather level, man. We haven't got to that yet. I think that it wasn't so much about the assistant. I think that the issue there is people don't know what they're looking for. So therefore they can't even put it on a piece of paper as to what these people, the task or responsibilities they should carry out. And I think a lot of it, the stigma that exists is like those older days, right? When you think of an assistant who is helping you make coffee and do some of those little things.
Yeah.
It's not about that anymore. It's way more than that. I think as you use the word Swiss Army, that is very true if you get the right person on the team.
Yeah, 100%. And it's there's 2 things, and I think they both challenge that old-fashioned viewpoint of what an assistant is. I would die before I asked my assistant to go make me a cup of coffee. Like she is incredibly more valuable than that. And so like in the early days, it's someone who like builds alongside you. Like I look at it as a partnership. And in the later stage, when the company's at scale, like the EAs to the C-suite are some of the most influential people in the company. They are running the railroad. We have some that will fill leadership positions if they need to temporarily. They are weapons in every sense of the word, man. It challenges that viewpoint, right? That old school viewpoint of, oh, they're making coffee and typing stuff. It's not that at all. They make it go. It's a real thing.
Absolutely. You're going to get no disagreement from the two of us on this. But then, okay, let's talk a little bit further on that. So if you've convinced me, right, I think assistant should be my next hire. Where should I go looking, man? Because I think a lot has changed. We live in this like virtual hybrid world.
Yeah.
Should this person be virtual? Should they be sitting next to me? Should they be someone I know already? What skills should they actually have?
Here, right? The first one is I do think that it can be done really successfully remote. You just have to be a remote company on purpose because like you guys have been in the game a while. There's a big difference between people who are remote because they want to be and they develop it and they're good at it, and people who are remote because COVID forced them to shut down their office and they're like, this kind of sucks, we'll mail it in. So I would just treat them as how you treat other teammates and work through the same cadences. And then the second question about what skills do they need? And I do this for every position. Like you can't get hired in any of my companies without going through a paid test project as part of the onboarding, or as part of the hiring process, rather. It's this principle: I can't work with you till I work with you. And it's been a fascinating experience to see, because there's a lot of candidates who I've interviewed who've interviewed, it works both ways. They'll interview really well, and then the test project is, I cannot believe this is the same person. Or people who might not be as good on their feet in the interview, and then they smash the test project, and you're like, oh my God, you're great. I might have passed up on you if we hadn't done the work together. So for the assistant, the way that I run test projects, I'm trying to remember, it was, I gave them like a Loom video of how I wanted a calendar organized. I set up a test calendar account, and I gave them like 7 different requests on the time to see how they would prioritize the different stuff. So like I told them how my week should work, gave them a bunch of ingredients, and then they would work the calendar and then present my week back to me on a call so I can see how they think about prioritizing my time. And there was another one where I would record a clip of a trip that I needed to coordinate with the different requirements, and they would go on and build the trip itinerary. And then a third one, I'd shoot a video and they'd write an SOP to document a project that I had. And so those 3 things, we pay all the candidates when we move to that stage. We pay them all for their time, whether we hire them or not, like no free lunches. But I try to get at least 3 hireable candidates to the test project stage, and then I let the work speak for itself. And at that point, if you vet them that way, with that specific project, you've tested their comprehension from a video, comprehension from written word, critical thinking from organizing the calendar, ability to like be process oriented and build an SOP, and see if they can organize facts into a scheduled itinerary. If I have someone who can check those 5 boxes, hired, let's go. So that's the way we do it.
Oh, man, I love that concept. You've just
I want to deep dive it.
Yeah. No, here you go.
I'm like, I love that concept too. I'm very similar in that I find interviewing really difficult, because I'll talk to someone and really I'm just judging personality. Do I think I like you? Do I think I get along with you? Every person interview says pretty similar stuff, right? I'm awesome. I've done this. I can do this. Yes, I love the job. Yes, I love your company. I've researched it. All that stuff, right? Yeah. People know how to interview and prepare for an interview. But the idea of paying someone and then getting to do some stuff really intrigues me. I know lots of people do tests for specific roles. Okay, cool. Role play this or do that. Yeah. But you're talking about something a bit more than that. You're talking about them giving up. How much time would you be expecting? How do you work out payment? How do you guys map that? And do you get a whole bunch of people who opt out and they're like, no, I don't want to do that?
Yeah. So a couple of principles on the test project. So we time cap it. So we'll lay out the work and then say, please limit your time investment to 10 hours in this project. We tell them the hourly rate. We have them send us an invoice. We pay them like a contractor, like anybody else. The time cap is interesting because it does a couple of things. Like for your really hard chargers, the ones who really want the job, they're going to go put 50 hours into this thing. But the problem is that doesn't actually translate to being a good team member. If it takes you 50 hours to do the calendar, it's already next week. We got problems, right? That's not a thing. So the time cap lets you gauge efficiency, and it also stops them from sending themselves down the rabbit hole, torturing themselves over this test project. It's either going to be a fit or it's not. So I love the time cap. I haven't had too many people self-select out on that stage, although it has happened. And when it does, it's a gift, right? Because that's awesome. No hard feelings, all the love in the world, like just not a fit for us. And that's cool. But more often than not, like I sequence that really late in the process. So like the way that I run a talent pipeline, we do the initial screen. We'll do we use predictive index to do like a personality assessment that we map to the job profile, and then cognitive assessments. We do that. Then we do the full interview. And then once you get through that stage, we take the 3 people who we think are the 3 finalists, and we'll advance them to the test project where they'll do the work and then present it back to us. And then we make the final decision. So that's the test project led hiring process.
So it's a small investment. You're paying 30 hours of time out testing the 3 best candidates you had and identifying, hey, which one resonates with me, whatever the job is, which one resonates with me, the role, the title, the leader, whatever it may be. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And honestly, like if anyone's out there listening to this struggling with the return on that investment, I hope you're not. But if you are, like forget the opportunity cost of having the wrong person in the role. Just tally up the salary. It's usually a 90-day recycle period, right? But hire someone, try to do them a solid, coach them up, coach them out, whatever. Call it 90 days. Maybe it's less, but it's usually 90. Just add up their salary. You're going to make zero progress in what you actually need long-term in the role if you have to recycle a new hire. If your test project is a few $100 versus a quarter's worth of their salary, it's obvious. It's just math. It's well worth it.
Oh, it's huge, man. You opened my eyes to so many different things too. I think you mentioned the fact that so many people are not good at interviewing. I would put myself in that bucket because I've never really applied for a role other than my first one. So you end up just, even when like Sean and I connected, we ended up having a coffee and we just talk about all sorts of things. So that's very important. But you put me in a formal interview process, I can probably guess knowing myself, I probably suck at it, right? Because if you're going to ask me questions in such a way that are structured, I'll probably get the shits and walk out, or just go, this is not for me. But this, if you gave me the ability to test my skill against something that I really wanted to go get, so I think you probably end up attracting the right candidates in the first place too by having such a process. And I'm going to steal that forever. I think
Take
this
it.
is
It's yours.
This is
Stolen.
been massive.
Stolen.
Well, stolen. I think it's just been massive.
Yeah. You said something, Ricky, that's interesting though about the interview too, because I believe that a lot of people who think they're being like hard on an interview, I'm talking from the employer side, a lot of it's, I don't know, like success theater, right? Where I'm going to ask these like tricky questions to like assess if you can think on your feet. Talk about the work. That's what we're here to you talk about, the work and the human. Like those are the two things. So I think also as an employer, interviewing is a skill. And this is any leader who's hiring anybody. Like interviewing is a skill to be developed, just like writing code or doing a sales call or whatever. And so the way that I do this is I always start off just about the human. Like, Ricky, if I was trying to hire you, I'd be like, tell me the story of Ricky. I just want to know whatever you're comfortable sharing. How'd you grow up? What's your path been through life? I don't know. Like, how did we end up on this call? And I'll rock with that for a few minutes, get to know the human. But when it gets into the work, right, like I do this different than most people. I'll ask 3 or 4 cascading questions that go deeper and deeper, because especially if you're hiring someone who has to physically do something with their hands, you see these people on their best day. The interview is usually the best you get.
Yeah.
And so they might work on a 40-person team who grew revenues by $10 million. They'd be like, I grew revenue by $10 million. Did you though? Like, how'd you do that? The A players remember everything. They know the before and after. They know the metrics. They know where they screwed up. They know what didn't work, what did work. They remember it all because it's here. And so I think that interviewing for depth instead of like trickery and like theater, that's what makes a good interview. And the people who can tell you, like I watched an intro video from a candidate right before I jumped on this call, and he was like, I'm an SDR. I've attained 300% of quota the past 2 years. I average this many calls, and those are only unique calls. I'm not counting when I reach out to the same account the same day. And he blasted his metrics in 37 seconds. And I'm like, cool. I believe that this person did exactly what he said he did in the interview, because the people who, unless you're a sociopath, the people who can rattle off numbers like that, they've done the thing, right? So I think that's how I look at the interviews. I'm just trying to figure out if you're for real or not. And then the work validates it. Those two things together, man, it's tough to miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Best book on this is called Hiring on Purpose by Max Hansen. He runs this executive search firm, one of the best ones in the world. Max is a genius when it comes to this stuff. Like, I've read that book cover to cover 3 times. And his writing style is really fun, but he also goes through so much stuff on hiring, from like how to write the JDs and how to survey your team, but also a ton of specific interview questions. Like, it's one of the best books in the game on how to do that. Learned a lot from this.
5 questions, and then I just have a chat to a person. If I can't tell whether they can do the job or not, then I've got the wrong person.
Yeah,
that's how I've always done it. It's probably a terrible way of doing it.
It just relies on whether or not you got a good picker. That's the only thing, right? If you got a good picker and your gut works, you're cool. But if you don't, then shots fired.
Thank you for opening that up for me. That was good. That was like right in there.
Yeah, I'm here to serve, guys.
Exactly. Now, you've given us a whole heap of wisdom and nuggets from this already. So I do want to ask you my favorite question. You've achieved a lot already in your life, professionally, personally. When you do decide to hang up your boots, what does Matt want to be known for?
I don't know if I'm ever going to hang up my boots. I'm just going to keep changing where my boots walk, so I don't have to retire from the life that I'm building. But that said, what I want to be known for, I'm really passionate about unlocking entrepreneurship for young people who have probably the predisposition and the personality traits to be great at it, but not necessarily the skills or the opportunities. And so I think that, you look, at least in the States, right? You're going through high school and you really have 2 paths, right? You can get into the trades or you can go to college, but nobody really talks about the third path of like how to really do entrepreneurship. Like, maybe you go to college and then you're getting taught entrepreneurship by some professor who may or may not have ever actually entrepreneured, right? There's varying degrees of quality, and there's some good programs out there. I'm not talking bad about everything, but it's tough to get a solid education around that, and also a current one, because a lot of the time the schools, like this field changes like wildfire. It might be 5 more years before they're teaching you how to write a Midjourney prompt to get a picture out of the thing or whatever. And so I just want to figure out, I haven't even started this yet, but I feel like it's, by the time I'm in the ground, like I'd like it to be the thing that I contribute to the world, is just some educational vehicle to help people 14, 15, 16, 17 years old index towards this third path of maybe I can actually create something. Maybe I can bring something into the world. And it's just a mix of like aptitude and intelligence and personality traits. It's certainly not for everyone, but I would just love that because I had all these traits and aptitude and I didn't unlock it until I was like 32. I loved my time in the fire department. It was amazing. It's one of the best years of my life and I wouldn't give them back for anything. But at the same time, I didn't know this was a choice. This wasn't on the menu. And so I'm just like, how can I put this on the menu for 1 million kids? It's a fun problem to think about. So
it's your calling, man. It's your calling.
We'll
Great
see.
purpose.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, love it. We'll take you through a quick fire round too now, Matt. These are super simple. So just spit
Awesome.
out whatever thought comes to your mind first. Favorite sports team?
This is a running joke with everyone who knows me. I don't do sports at all.
That's cool.
So I'm an athlete. Like I do endurance running and ultra marathons and triathlons, stuff like that. But I don't really watch organized sports. And so everyone around me, they throw these sports analogies out there, and I'm like, "Go team!" I have no idea what you're talking about. It depends on what I'm doing, right? If I'm training, then obviously I have something heavy on. If I'm working, trying to focus, I'll do a lot of what's it called? EDM, like the beats kind of stuff.
You're on an island. You're stuck on an island. You have one fucking genre you can bring with you. And I told you, there's no more of this. Everyone can pick shit. You got to pick one. That's how it works.
All right. But if I'm stuck on an island, I'm going classical, Sean. That's the thing. Like when I go out for rucks with the backpack, like I'm classical music all the way. I'm going to be out there for hours. So that's what I'll bring with me to the island.
Okay, let me rephrase it then. I'm going to kill every musician on the planet except one genre. Which genre are you keeping?
Oh man, you can probably kill country safely without hurting me.
Oh man,
yeah,
you're just knocking up them. Yeah.
I'll rock with the classical. We'll go with that.
Classical, done.
That's what I'll
like
hang my hat on. There you go.
Yeah, it's sorted. What about favorite movie of all time? You're a movie buff?
A little bit. I love I'm kind of nerd. I'm a space nerd, man. So I think my favorite of all time is probably Apollo 13. A solid classic space flick. That's a good one.
Yeah, nice. And I didn't have to kill anyone. We got an answer. That was good.
Good, man. You're good. I know.
What about favorite place to visit? What's your happy place?
Anywhere with a mountain and a view. And so I'm just everywhere I go, I'm trying to chase scenery. That's what it comes down to. From local little mountains here out in Colorado. This next ultra marathon I'm doing is in Arizona over the Colorado River. I'm just I'm always chasing scenery, but I'm happiest if I'm up at elevation looking over something.
New Zealand, man, you gotta add that to your list. So I think
That's
you
it.
say that. But,
yeah.
What about this one? So I think going back to Sean's earlier point, this is why we designed the whole podcast. But talking about being on an island, this was going to be your last meal. You've got 2 jars, peanut butter crunchy on left, smooth on the right.
Easy, smooth all day, baby. That's an easy one. All day long.
24.
We're struggling. Why even have peanut butter?
Struggling because you like the wrong peanut butter, guys. That's the problem.
2024 has been a run.
Good. You're just interviewing really smart people on the podcast.
It leveled up our game in 2024 is what you're saying. Awesome, on that note, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for sharing all your insight. Loved it, man.
Yes, that was awesome, guys. Thank you so much.